Let's get it cozy. Why not? Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I also want to just thank again Bu Zhi DAO and all the sponsors for making this a possibility. I just got in about 4 days ago from Los Angeles, so it's been a pleasure to be back in Taiwan. It's been about 11 years myself, so it's great to see a lot of familiar faces that has come back that decided to make Taiwan one of their stops. And so it's my pleasure to be moderating this panel today. I had a pleasure to meet a bunch of these awesome individuals before our talk today. And I think to start things off, why don't we just go around and introduce yourself, what you do, where you're based, and yeah, what your company does.
Sure. So my name's Jonathan. I am the CEO and co-founder of Moongate. I think as all of you are here, you've definitely used our technology already as we're empowering all the kind of NFT ticketing for the conference. I'm based in San Francisco and in Hong Kong, but currently kind of mostly spend my time in Hong Kong, which is where our tech team is based.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm the co-founder of Xerox Avenue. So if you have been around the exhibition on the other side, you've probably seen us hanging around the merchandising booth. So we power the official merchandise for this event along with Legitimate. And our team is based in Taipei, so we're mostly in Taiwan, and very happy to meet you all.
Hey everybody, my name is Calvin. I'm the CEO and founder of Legitimate. We back physical products with NFTs to power next generation consumer engagement between brands and everyday consumers. Primarily for things like digital experiences and activations, but also for end-to-end authenticity and provenance.
Awesome, thanks so much guys for the intros. As we can see, the title of the panel today is The Future of NFT Utility. And I'm sure we got a blend of everyone from every walk of, I guess, life in the NFT space in the audience. Maybe you are a full-on degen. You're just flipping into different collections. You're a blue chip holder. You might be an NFT skeptic, and you're here and asking, why am I here today? Why am I at this panel? We welcome all you guys from all range of the spectrum. Maybe you're just here to learn, and that's fantastic as well. And so the purpose of this panel is to really dive into the rabbit hole of what we see as maybe from a futurist perspective, the future of utility in this space. And so I'd like to open this up to everybody as just an open question that anyone can kind of touch on. But what do you guys see as like the next evolving trend and evolving utilities for NFTs right now?
I always start off with this very strong point, is that the future of NFTs is that nobody talks about NFTs at all. And we've already seen this happening with Starbucks loyalty points. I mean, those aren't NFTs per se, but I think that applies to blockchain technologies as well. Nobody really goes on their phone and says, I'm gonna connect to a server halfway across the world and use the HTTP protocol, right? So we say things like, we're gonna go on TikTok, we're gonna go on Instagram, we're gonna go on Shopify and buy stuff. So I think, really in terms of real world use cases, that's probably where we're headed.
Yeah, so to build on that, I really think what Kelvin just mentioned, really like the commoditization of NFTs, is that, for example, people are going to use a lot of these technologies to power their day-to-day lives without even noticing it. So, for example, I really like what Jonathan is doing with the Moongate team. That, like, for example, all your tickets in your wallet right now, these are NFTs, and sometimes, throughout years of using the same wallet, you might accumulate like thousands of these in your wallet. You won't even notice them because for you it's just a ticket, right? And these things are going to be, offering a lot of insights into what you like, where you've been to, what kind of passion do you have, and this is also going to be something that is going to be very, very prominent in the coming years when we can really utilize these kind of data.
And yeah, I totally agree with kind of both of you. I think the future of NFT is just people don't even know it's NFT. So we're already in talks with a lot of brands and businesses to help them do like NFT-based memberships. And all of them would kind of require us to not even put NFT in kind of part of the brand, right? Because ultimately, unfortunately, because of kind of the last NFT kind of summer, there are some negative connotations to just speculative NFTs. But what we care about, and I think all of us could agree here, is that the underlying technology of NFT is quite kind of strong and powerful, I think. And so yeah, in the future, we really don't think kind of NFTs would be called NFTs. People would just use it without knowing that.
Yeah, I can double down on the fact that brands are trying to use blockchain and NFT technology and requiring that we don't use the verbiage of NFT technology.
I mean, I'm also my own best critic too, being, I started a private JetDAO where we do membership gated NFTs. And, the way that we've pivoted our business in this bear market is we've realized that our clients and our customers is kind of where we should be looking, number one, of how we're building utility, right? I think if we're just building utility in a vacuum, but we're not really listening to our customer base of what do they really want? How do we maximize customer value? I think we're probably falling flat, right? So that leads to my, I guess, the follow-up question is, looking at your customer, or as you're learning your customer, what do you believe is the next NFT utility that's truly maximizing customer value?
Sure. So NFT ticketing is actually just one aspect of our business. The other kind of more, where we spend more of our time right now is actually NFT-based memberships. And I think what's cool about that is that with memberships that are built with NFTs, it allows people to actually own the membership. And when I say own, what I mean by that is it changes people's paradigm when they spend. So imagine if you're going to a store, in a Web2-based kind of membership, you're spending so that in the future you come back to the store for a discount. But that value is always kind of locked towards this brand. But with NFT-based memberships that are kind of transferable, I go to a store and I spend, but in the future, I know that if one day I don't want to support this store anymore, I could actually sell that membership with its rewards to someone else. So I start to spend to kind of own this asset, right? I'm spending money to grow this asset. And I think what brands and businesses are really excited about. They think that because of this shift in mentality, they could actually get more user engagement, but ultimately just kind of drive higher kind of customer value.
So I think that's a really, really great point. So like touch on commerce, right? We also at 0x Avenue really believe in like commerce, especially what we call token-gated commerce is going to be really, really big in the future. So we power the official merchandise, but that's actually just a small part of our whole business. What we're really building is we call Web3 commerce or token-gated commerce, is that a personalized experience that is determined by what kind of tokens you hold in your wallet. So as we mentioned earlier, you're going to have all kinds of NFTs in your wallet, from like events you go to, all kinds of proof of attendance protocols, things that you're passionate about, you hold them in your wallet, and these provides a very valuable insight for brands to really know what their customers like and personalize experiences for their customers. And this also connects to another point, which I would like to call phygital products. And so Kelvin might be able to elaborate on this a little bit more. Yep.
Yeah, so when we were talking about powering physical products with NFTs, we literally mean backing actual physical products with an NFT, primarily for provenance. But a lot of brands we're seeing want to leverage this technology to engage with their customers in a new way. I mean, like, most of us here are probably beyond the age where we're spending upwards 10, 12 hours a day playing video games, but a lot of kids nowadays are living dual lives. Digital and physical, whether it's a metaverse or Fortnite or whatever, right? So for brands to be able to engage with their fans, not only digitally in these metaverses, but also encourage them to still buy physical products, still walk into a brick and mortar store. That's really powerful, and that's sort of where the retail industry as a whole is really kind of headed. In a lot of people are calling it phygital, physical NFTs, physical digital twins, whatever you want to call it. It's this duality between physical and digital. We've seen this push towards people saying, hey, the future is going to be, this metaverse, that metaverse. That's never going to be the case. At the end of the day, we're all like physical human beings. Yeah. And, brands have always known this, but they're really trying to kind of cater towards this duality between physical and digital. And I think everybody here is working in a space that really is pushing the boundaries between, hey, what's actually tangible in real life and what's tangible in a digital setting.
Yeah, I mean, as myself being in the NFT space and also as an observer outside looking in on like wearable, like AR, enhanced, like I guess wearable phygital goods, I'm still kind of, the jury's out for me personally, right? I don't know what's going to happen in terms of people that are not part of Web3, what's going to happen, how are they coming into this space, right? Because I feel like a lot of products that are being built right now are catering to the Web3 user and customer. It makes us really happy. We're really stoked about kind of all these new innovations, but from someone not in Web3, it can be kind of overwhelming. What kind of things do we need to overcome to really build a very approachable way for the non-Web3 user to come into the market?
So one of the main things that I believe in is that wallets, especially like your self-custody wallets, it's got to be way easier. It's got to improve by a lot and become way more easy for the average consumer to use. And that's going to be really like as we mentioned earlier, how you're using NFT technology without even noticing it. And it might come one day where you're using wallets without really need to go through like writing down your receipt phrase, you're trying to connect to sites, you don't even know it's safe. So like the security, the usability of wallets, it's got to be way easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think nowadays we already have the infrastructure to be able to onboard kind of Web2 users into Web3 just using their emails or kind of phone numbers. I think a lot of us already have that tech integrated. And I was asked by a VC recently, like, why can't why didn't NFT ticketing kind of take off before, right? Why didn't Taylor Swift use kind of NFT ticketing? And I think our response to that is that the infrastructure just wasn't ready back then, but it is ready now. And so I think we are able to onboard kind of large groups of Web2 people into Web3 without them even knowing it with these infrastructures in place.
Yeah, and just like to build on that, I think wallet experience, user experience is a big thing that we're all thinking through right now. Especially for us, we're working with a brand to do a massive release through traditional retail channels like Foot Locker or traditional retail stores. Everyday people who have never used a crypto wallet before will be working with us to kind of power these physical products really. And for us, one of the big things we're thinking through is, okay, there's no way we can tell somebody to download MetaMask, change the network to Avalanche C chain, and then, hey, maybe buy some Avalanche. Oh, transfer it to your, like the steps are just so many steps involved. So we really need to think through, okay, how do we actually make this the easiest and most seamless solution for people who have never, bought crypto before or have no idea what blockchain is. And I think, yeah, in terms of, sort of single sign-on solutions or other solutions to manage wallets, especially what Moongate's doing, I think that's super powerful and definitely something that we all should be, really thinking about moving into the next year or two.
Yeah, and so also, while we're lowering the usability threshold, there's also one other thing that we have to pay attention to is that the draw to bring people into this space, right? So like the previous panelists mentioned, right? You need to have something that's so exciting that you want to use it. So like what we're doing right now is that token gated commerce can really bring a new design space for people, especially like digital experiences. As Kelvin mentioned earlier, you might not spend 12 hours in the metaverse, but if something you can wear every day, or something you can use every day, or something that a ticket that you bought and just taking you to somewhere exciting, going to a concert, going to a conference, or something that you wear on yourself, and it also has some digital properties that you can show off to your friends. Sometimes you can bring it to your Fortnite. It's like a skin. These things are really what's going to onboard massive scale of users into Web3 space and using NFTs powering all these use cases.
So, like, from a perspective of, let's just say I'm the biggest skeptic of NFTs. Personally, like, I went to like Ape Fest, and it was a very there was a lot of friction that I experienced personally being at NFT NYC, going to the event. Like, I got my ticket, and it took I think the things that I didn't like about kind of the whole gated experience is that there was still a lot of lines. There was still I think it took me an hour and a half to get a slice of pizza. It took me an hour and a half to buy an overpriced T-shirt. How are we, as I guess a community, learning from the status quo to kind of change kind of the user's experience or the community's experience with these gated events? Like, how are we what should we be doing to address that? Yeah,
so actually we encountered something similar. Actually, right before this conference, our product was quite embedded into, you'd have to jump through quite a few hoops before you're able to actually access your NFT ticket. But actually, at the beginning of this week, our whole team didn't sleep just so that we can redo the whole thing, just so that we can extract the QR code verification system into your email. So I think one thing that a lot of teams that I've talked to ended up doing was that initially when they first built their product, they made it way too kind of Web 2 focused, right? They're like, oh, we're Web 3 degens, everything has to be Web 3, Web 3, Web 3. But what I learned was that if we really want to penetrate kind of the Web 2 space and really work with all these and really generate kind of mass adoption, at some, like, I think we need to kind of give up certain elements of kind of Web 3 and make it kind of more Web 2 friendly. And that's what we kind of did for this conference, and we're going to do that kind of going forward. And just continue to iterate our process to make it easier and easier for Web 2 people to onboard into kind of Web 3.
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum, right? Not everything needs to be fully decentralized. I mean, finance and DeFi is one thing. I think, you know, we're specifically not on a DeFi panel for that particular reason, right? I think there are merits to full decentralization. I mean, I used to work for a DeFi company, so I completely get it. But when it comes to real world, you know, retail events, at the end of the day, there's always going to be some sort of friction. You're limited by how fast people move, how fast, you know, the network connection is to pull up a QR code on your phone. Like all of that stuff still needs to be considered, and that's probably not going to go away in the next 5 to 10 years. So when we think about, hey, like catering to, you know, everyday people, we really need to think about, okay, like actually, you know, this is good in idea, but is it good in practice? And that's something that we're starting to become more mature about as an industry as a whole.
Yeah, I completely agree. So one of the lessons that we learned is that, you know, for example, in commerce, right, one thing we could really learn from Web 2 is that, you know, Web 2 has great user experiences. Like it might not be decentralized, it might have some like, you know, privacy issues, like data usage issues, but it is a great experience. Like if you use like Instagram, it's great. If you use Facebook, like it's a great experience, right? So for example, at our store, like we were so excited about the Web3 technology. Sometimes we're just like diving head in, like, you know, we're just fully Web3. So we basically require users to have a MetaMask wallet to be able to buy something from a store. So these kind of things needs to be, you know, like more user-centric. Like when you're building the technology, the whole experience, like it might be easy for us because we're building the product and we know how every step works. We already have all the, you know, necessary wallets, everything set up, but not everyone, right? So when you're considering like from user experience perspective, you really got to put them first to be able to provide like something that is comparable to what people already have today.
Yeah, and I think just to add, like for what we're building, since we're interacting with so many kind of Web 2 customers, it's important to actually figure out how we integrate with like more legacy systems in the Web 2 space. Like we deal with a lot of brands and businesses, so we need to figure out how do we integrate our technology into their POS systems. And realistically, you can't always kind of move all their POS data on chain in real time. That's just not a scalable solution. So in those instances, we just have to adopt kind of more Web 2 approaches. And I think it's actually okay to do that, right? As kind of Calvin said earlier, like we don't need to be, it's a spectrum. It doesn't have to be fully decentralized. As long as we reap kind of the benefits that matter using Web 3, I think it's okay.
No, I'd just like to add to that too. I completely agree that I don't believe there's, I tend to be in the radical middle when it comes to, I guess, centralization versus decentralization, because I believe in checks and balances. I think there's, you know, there's, I guess, a neutral value if there's something centralized and decentralized, if people act in the best interest of the total community, but that just doesn't happen because I think human nature reveals itself. People act in their own selfish interests, and that's why there's probably people that are on the spectrum in this audience that are total CeFi, maybe, or maybe total DeFi, but we've seen the bad actors from both sides. So I definitely believe that there needs to be a realistic blend of Web 2 on-ramps and Web 3 on-ramps. Otherwise, the customer experience isn't going to be fun. Like, I think it's, for anyone that is in the audience, has anyone bought an NFT for like a gated event before? Has anyone done that in like, anybody? A few people? Okay. I've done it myself. I felt like it wasn't the easiest experience because I always like, it was on Ethereum when I went to NFT NYC. The gas fees were a lot more expensive than the ticket itself. And so it was sad because I'm like, why am I paying more for the gas fees than the $30, $40 for the admission to go into this NFT gallery? Is this just something we accept as a Web3 community that gas fees are just going to be this way. And as someone that maybe may not be from Web3, I'm having to pay this gas fee. I already learned how to build a MetaMask. Just even though I went through all those steps, I still feel the pain point that this is very grossly inefficient. Why not just use Ticketmaster, right? So I would agree on kind of where everyone's kind of sitting here is that I think the radical middle of, everything is on the spectrum, but we should probably, find where, the middle being the customer's best frictionless experience. That's probably where I would sit as well.
So actually, I see just now there aren't that many people that raised their hands, but actually all of you should have raised your hands because all the tickets here today are NFT gated, right? So, but yeah, no, totally agree with you. Like previously for 8Fest and all those NFT NYC, technology just wasn't ready, right? And for token proof specifically, that's not what they were focused on, and so as a result, the experience was pretty bad.
Sure. And I think to really look at the future of utility, I really want to address kind of the status quo of what we're seeing literally today come in the news. We're seeing a lot of probably the shillers that we probably don't necessarily like. We see the celebrities that are now coming to light that were shilling Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Justin Bieber, Paris Hilton, Jimmy Fallon. Now they're being wrangled in for proposed class action lawsuits by customers that feel like they got rugged, right? There's a lot of the outside perception that's now being projected that we may not necessarily have anything to do with, but now we kind of have to deal with that bias and that stereo, or that stigma, I should say, being in this market. I guess from your guys' opinion, do you guys believe that there should be regulation in this space for a better future for NFT utility, or do you believe more in self-regulation of maybe from a collective industry standpoint? I'd just be curious to hear what you guys' thoughts would be on that.
Go first. So I think regulation-wise, because the technology is still so new, there's so many use cases and so many ways of utilizing the technology is just popping up everywhere. So regulation is going to be constantly one step behind what's popping up. And so there is still always going to be cases here and there that you people would say, oh, it's fraud. People would say this project's rugged, and then people got scammed. It's going to happen for maybe 3 to 5 years down the road. It's still going to happen here and there, and regulation is going to slowly catch up, right? It's going to slowly, after learning from our past mistakes, we're going to slowly learn okay, so this is okay, that's not okay. We need to protect consumers this way, and we're going to allow some innovation there. But there's going to have to be a balance because we can't in terms of regulation, if we say okay, we're not going to allow any sort of innovation that is outside what already written down here, then the technology is not going to be, it's not going to move forward. We're going to have no innovation. Yeah.
I think it's telling because a lot of the brands that we talk to are scared, right? They don't want to use the words NFT. They don't want to use the words blockchain. But yeah, I think it really boils down to the use case, and I think that legislation needs to understand that this in and out of itself is a underlying technology layer, not actual, securities or whatever. I mean, for us, we put chips in hoodies and we back those hoodies with NFTs so that when you scan them, similar to how you can scan the Moongate, ticket, you can unlock and claim an NFT. That's primarily for authenticity. So if you're telling me that helping a brand prevent their merchandise from being counterfeit. Like the Bored Ape hoodies. They were released during 8Fest, and 2 days later they showed up on Alibaba, right?
Oh, no.
So that's a huge problem with a lot of brands. And if you're saying that helping brands overcome that problem is going to violate some sort of securities regulation or some sort of other legislation as a whole, then you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot for being, not nearly as progressive and not even helping your constituents really kind of figure out what's best for them from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, if anything, we are really the only ones that are adding real utility into kind of any type of crypto items, right? Real applications, real utility. Whereas a lot of other kind of crypto projects, they are really just like securities, realistically. They might kind of jump through a few hoops before they say that they're not security, but come on, we all know it's security. And so if anything, I think regulation is probably going to go after them first, but eventually maybe it'll come to us, but probably further down the road.
Well, yeah, I think that's the scary thing is that, because we're grouping everything under this term of NFT, we, people, not just us, but other projects, other teams that are building actual relevant physical in real life use cases are having to deal with the consequences of the industry as a whole too. So I think I don't know if I have an answer to that question. I think it's
for sure.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, like, I think there's just that new stigma and bias that I've had to overcome myself. Like, I run a private jet charter aviation community through NFT gated memberships, and I think the biggest hoop that I've personally had to kind of overcome is the whole Web3 conversation in general. I think it confuses the customer. For me, our customer is actually legacy clients that fly private charter. It's not necessarily crypto whales. Although they might fly private charter, it's really confusing for someone if I describe to them a JetDAO where you have a token-gated community that can fly together. Like they get confused by the jargon, right? And so I've learned from my personal experience is that unfortunately, I've had to kind of taken out a lot of the jargon that really created Web3, right? NFTs, utility. I just say we're a charter membership aviation business. And it's a little more understandable as if you used Wheels Up or used any other business. So I've personally had to, from a reactive standpoint, had to be proactive to get ahead of the story to make sure that any one of my target customers doesn't feel threatened or doesn't feel intimidated. And personally for me, I think this also applies to my thoughts on blockchain, is that if you can't feel blockchain, it's like under the hood. In the same way that if you don't feel the NFT experience and it's under the hood, I think that you created a great product, right? Because then the Web 2 user never had any friction. They experienced a premium experience, whether it was through an event, maybe buying a phygital product, right? I think that's where we ultimately need to head, is that if you don't even know NFTs involved, you made a really good NFT project, right? I don't know about you guys, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So echoing on that point, right? So for example, let's say like digital items, let's say, like ticketing, all these things really, we're saying like NFT utility, even though the panel like says like NFT utility, right? So when you frame it like that, you're really saying like, oh, NFTs are the centerpiece of the puzzle. But in reality, like what the use case that we've been seeing, like where it's going to be most prominent, is that you're going to use NFT as like the underlying technology. You're never going to say, I'm using like internet utility, right? Like you're just using the technology. So, if you frame it that way, you can sort of imagine a lot of these use cases coming up where NFT just powers the thing, like you said, under the hood, right? You wouldn't notice it, but it's going to be, permeating through your lives, like 3 to 5 years down the road, for sure.
Yeah, I don't angel invest, but people, like a lot of NFT projects have reached out for either advice or to see if I would angel invest. But as a fun exercise, I usually tell people, hey, like, can you actually explain what your project does without using any blockchain verbiage?
I love that.
A lot of people fail that test. Right? It's kind of like the one-liner, two-liner elevator pitch test, but like oriented for like the Web3 space, where a lot of projects can't do that. And if you can, then yeah, like Kenji says, you're leagues ahead of the game here.
I'd like to open up any questions for the audience. If you have anything that you're curious about an NFT utility, feel free to ask away. I'll welcome any skeptics in the audience too. It's okay if you're not completely sold either.
Hi, thank you for the panel, but I just wonder that what if the whole NFT technology does not work in the future or in the utility? What should we do? Thank you.
I'm trying to understand, what do you mean by it doesn't work? Because you guys are already using it. Like, in what sense do you mean not working?
Let's say, okay, for instance, people say that 我可以讲中文吗？不好意思，英文没那么强。好，就是说，很多那个 NFT 可以做的事情，做那个事情啊，好棒棒。然后，对我们现在也是有一种，比如说门票啦，或者是一些东西。那会不会？那可是也许到了未来会发现说，好像就是没有办法再有更进一步，就是更有一个更高层次的应用。比如说，因为现在大家都说啊 NFT 那不就是高级会员证嘛，或者就是一个虚拟物品而已嘛。那可是 那会不会说到时候发现说，其实就只能做到这边，然后没有更好的应用这样？谢谢。
Okay, I could, may I answer in English? Okay, yeah. So if you think about like, let's say like NFT doesn't work, there are several fail points that could happen, right? So it could be like the network went down. It could be you have no internet connection. It could be some integration problems with your service that you've built, right? So not necessarily on the blockchain, but maybe the service that you've built. And these same problems happen with all the Web2 applications that we have today, right? For example, you're using Facebook and suddenly it's like, oh, oops, your page does not exist. You know, these things still happen, and we still work hard to improve on these. As you mentioned on the second question, like what happens if we don't have any other use cases other than, for example, ticketing, which is pretty mature already, right? So what I believe is that blockchain is essentially, if you really sort of dumb down like what it is, it's just a bunch of data stored somewhere in a bunch of nodes operated by a bunch of computers, right? And these are really data points that you can use just the same way as you use like databases collected by Facebook, by Google, by any of these big companies. So if you can think of more use cases, you can use data, then blockchain is going to have more use cases. Simple as that.
My parents, when I was growing up, always told me that one day I'll regret not learning Chinese, and today's that day.
Yeah, can you translate the question, what he asked?
Yeah, so
He can go first, but yeah, please translate.
Can you translate for the audience?
Yeah, so the question was, first question was like, what if the technology doesn't work, like if it goes down, if like something breaks, right? And the second part, from what I understand, is that we have like certain use cases, like membership program, like loyalty programs, like ticketing. Like these things are basically you have like a pass to a certain thing that is gated. What if we couldn't come up with better use cases other than this? What if this is it? This is it for Web3?
Yeah. So I think on the first question you've kind of addressed it pretty well, but on the second question. I think there are a lot more kind of use cases by analyzing kind of people's purchasing pattern, analyzing people's kind of visits. Like if you visited this conference, theoretically, like people that are trying to market kind of next conference could just look and see that, hey, you have a Taipei Blockchain Week ticket in your wallet. I could kind of market you and kind of sell you stuff. And kind of same could be applicable for like fashion brands, right? And I think that in itself could unlock a lot more kind of use cases on top of that. Right now, we're just kind of building the first steps, but we think on top of these use cases, there could be a lot more potential that could be unlocked.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you were mentioning token-gated commerce. Like personally, like with what we do at JetDAO, the way we targeted our customer was looking at just at everyone's wallets. Like what kind of blue chip projects do they hold themselves, right? That shows a lot of data of what kind of type of customer that is, right? If they're holding things that are under the floor of 5 ETH, if they're holding legacy CryptoPunks, like Grail, like apes, then I know that they might be my potential customer, right? So I think there's a lot of data alone, right? Data is probably one of the biggest, I would say, utilities that comes from the space right now. If we just look at how that data is structured, I think you're going to see a lot of maybe more CRMs that come into the play of using that API to make better informed decisions like you guys are already doing, I'm assuming, right now.
Yeah, I think we were actually talking to our team earlier because we just onboarded some people who are pretty new to crypto, and they're like, hey, what if Polygon just like ceases to exist tomorrow, right? Like, should we trust that we can build on them? And I mean, that's actually the brilliance of the blockchain, because at any point we can spin up our own node of pretty much any layer 1 or layer 2 or whatever, right? In which case, as long as there are nodes active, like it doesn't matter if Polygon, the company or whatever, ceases to exist. Like that data is still there. So yeah, I mean, like, I agree with everybody who said that, hey, if something goes down, we'll work through it. But also, this is more resilient than running your own server on AWS or whatever. So there's that point. And second point is like, specifically for retail, because that's really what I know best. I can't really answer any other industry here. Is everything that we're talking about, token-gated commerce, data and analytics, authenticity and provenance. These are all problems and spaces that already exist today. They're just not solved optimally given today's, more common solutions. So these problems have yet to cease to exist and will probably not cease to exist. Going on to the data and analytics part, one of the biggest problems that brands have today is like, they have no idea what's actually in your physical closet. So how can they actually provide recommendations, right? How can a Nike try and market towards somebody who owns like 90% Adidas in their closet? Like that's really hard. But once we bridge and like edge onto the territory of phygital, like then you're gonna have more transparency. You're gonna have not necessarily like data violation, because at the end of the day, like it's on an open source blockchain, right? And it's not like it's being captured against anybody's will.
No, thanks for those thoughts. I'd like to just wrap this panel with any final thoughts you guys might have, or takeaways for the audience on the future of NFT utility.
Yeah, so I think we're just at kind of the cusp of kind of massive adoption of NFTs. I think finally now, especially kind of in the market condition, like everyone's actually trying to find real use cases of NFT and blockchain technology. And I think lucky for kind of us three is that I think we're building in the right sector. We don't need to rely on any kind of speculation. We don't need to kind of flip a coin or anything for us, flip a token for us to kind of generate revenue. I think each of us are actually generating revenue for each of the businesses that we're doing. So our business fundamentally is kind of sustainable. And I think that's extremely exciting. And I think you guys would echo the same.
Totally agree.
Yeah, definitely. I think anytime you get off a panel and you're like, hey, there are so many ways we could all work together, I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah, I'll see you guys over there. Talk about it.
See you after. Well, thanks again, everybody. I'd like to thank again Bu Zhi DAO and the sponsors for having us here today. Hope you guys enjoyed the panel.